So I'm Patti Provost, and this is my husband Larry Provost. And Larry's had chickens most of his adult life, so he's the expert. I just help. So most of the questions he'll be able to answer. But we prepared a little handout for you, just for we weren't sure what stage of chickens. Yeah, you can pass those around. What stage you are with having chickens. If some of you have had experience with them, or if you're brand new, or just thinking about getting chickens. And so we made that generic, and then just thought that we'll present just a little bit of information, and then just open it up to questions and see if there's things that we can share with you that might help you. So as you probably noticed as you walked in, we do have baby chicks. They're about 2 weeks old, and we like to get new chicks almost every year, because it just helps so that as the others are getting older and slow down in their production and laying eggs, that then we'll have some that will step up as they slow down. So I think we ended up getting more than we usually do, at least the last 2 years. I think, I don't know if you've been listening to the news and heard about food shortages and worried about some of the supply chain and things. So last year, Larry said, I think we need to get more chickens, and so anyway, so we've gone from just having a nice amount of chickens to quite a few. But come on in.
I told her I was going to the store to get some chickens. So her mind, she's competing.
So 6 or 10 or 12.
I come home with 30. But we're grateful we had them, because you get them this time of year and they don't start laying until like October. And so we was able to, the chickens, the 30s kicked in and were laying all through winter. And so the egg shortage came around, and the neighbors wanted eggs. So it worked out good. Anyway, I can tell you how I got my start on chickens. When I first moved up here, we built a house, and I did most of the work on the house myself, and so I wanted some chickens, and I didn't have a whole lot of money, so I went out to my garden that I had fenced off, and I had fence posts every 10 feet, so I just went in, took 2 fence posts, came out like 6 feet, planted 2 more posts, and another post to hang a door on, and wrapped it with wire, and did a little makeshift roof over it, went down the Brent Theobald and got a couple of pieces of siding, sheet metal. That was my chicken coop. And when I initially did it, I got just the cheapest wire I could get, and it had some pretty good sized holes. And I wasn't even thinking. Next thing I know, the sparrows were falling through and keep me out of house and home in my chicken coop. I had to go back out and get the really fine chicken netting. And, so that was my coop for a while. And then one night the chickens were raising a storm out there, and I went out, and there was something had a hold of the gate with its mouth, and I don't know if it was a bobcat or a dog, but it was just a growling and trying to get in there. So, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, a neighbor was moving, Jordan Peterson, I don't know if you remember him, but anyway, he was getting rid of some slats of lumber, like 1 by 6s. So I lined the hole outside of that with that, and so that kept the wind out, kept them a little warm in there, and then a year or 2 later, Jaron Hunt was moving, and he had a coop he wanted to get off. so gone over, and so we have a makeshift coop, and we have a coop that we built. And so it's kind of evolved from like 6 to 8 chickens to, yeah, more chickens.
We have 15 nesting boxes. So in the coop, there's roosting bars and nesting boxes. And then we keep their food and their water outside of the coop. And we have just a little chicken door so they can go in and out. And we had a little trouble this winter that some of our younger hens didn't like, or the older hens weren't nice to the younger hens, and so they wouldn't let them in the coop. They weren't very nice to them. Anyway, so they discovered that they could just roost in our cedar tree that's also in our chicken area. And so they would just climb up in the tree, sometimes 7 feet high up in the tree. But then this winter, Larry would go out to check them in the morning, and every other morning he would find one half eaten and dead, just laying there. And so it took us several weeks to figure out what was getting to them and what the problem was. There was an owl that every other night it would fly in and steal one of the chickens out of the tree. And so we figured out the only thing we could do is to take the chickens and put them back in the coop. And they realized, wow, this is a beautiful place. There's heat lamps in here and lots of roosting places. And so it only took a couple of nights of taking them out of the tree and putting them in the coop that they decided they would stay in the coop. But anyway, so that's one thing is as you're considering chickens, or if you have chickens, that everything loves to eat chickens, even owls. And so we didn't think that would be a problem at night.
Never has been, no.
Yeah, until just this year. We've had lots of trouble with dogs in the past, and have lost quite a few chickens to dogs. But when we first had our chickens, we would just let them free everywhere. They would just come out in the front yard and all around. And then at night, they knew that where they would go was back to the coop. And so every night they would always end up in the coop. But then we ended up with some rock roosters that were just awful. They were so mean, the kids wouldn't even go out in the backyard because they would just chase them and jump up on them and try to scratch down the back of them. And then the chickens, for some reason, thought that the best place to poop was right outside the back door. And so that's when we decided they just needed their own space.
Well, plus we had this dog killed 14 one night, so one dog.
Well, we're not sure if it was one dog.
Well, I think it was Kirby's.
We don't know.
Kirby's dog.
No, we don't know.
Oh, well.
We don't know.
Dog is that dog.
What about cats? Cats aren't really a problem.
No, the neighbor has 2 cats.
And the cat walks through there all the time and will drink out of the chicken water, and they don't seem to bother each other. So cats seem to be fine.
Coyotes, I've seen coyotes come down, trying to get in. You gotta keep them protected. Anyway, did you want to go through this?
Yeah, so we'll just kind of go just through this handout, and then it's so muddy out there right now that we'll just step out on the deck and just point out to you and kind of show you what we have out there and how we do it. And it's there. I don't know that there's any perfect way. It's just what works for us. And so this handout, it's just some things that we've discovered make a difference and have really helped. And so we thought that that's what we would pass on to you. So the first part is just things to consider if you're just getting started. In fact, by a raise of hands, how many of you already have chickens? Okay, and how many are wanting to get chickens, or do you have? Okay, so it's starting with
chicken.
not the chirping.
We're recovering.
You're recovering chicken owners. So you had chickens and decided that was enough, and took a break, and now you're thinking maybe it's time to get some again. We feel like it just gives us peace of mind knowing that if the food supply does break down, or if it's hard to get that we have some. And we try to stay ahead on our feed so that we know that we'll be able to feed them for a long length of time. And we'll talk to you about the feed too. I just have some on display here, and then some feeder ideas too that we'll share with you that we found has really worked well for us to and hopefully be a blessing for you too. But so do you want to? Or do you want me to share it and then you?
Yeah, you can just go down there, when we're looking for chickens, we're interested in ones that, lay lots of eggs. And there's certain breeds that do better than others, like, Rhode Island Red, are pretty good. These, sextant ones, sextant, you can do a red or a gold or a black sextant. Sextant. And
The
why
reason
they
it's
call them that,
oh, go ahead.
why they call them that is, the cross between, two specific, breeds. But, what happens is that the hens all end up one color and the roosters end up white. So they're really easy to sex when they old.
They're hardy in the winter and they don't die because
We look for those varieties, the Rhode Island Red and full color. We haven't had any problem with the varieties we have had, Buffalo Bucans and Barred Rock, Rhode Island Reds and the Sexton. Another name, a lot of names are the same for the same breed. Like we bought some Ice and Brown. They're basically a brown Sexton. Like Tractor Supply might call them Ice and Brown, or maybe they're coming from the or
picking up this.
yeah.
So do you check, I'm sorry, do you check for, you mentioned that mean rooster. Is that one of the things you look at? It's like, because that was one of the things when we went looking, we looked how friendly are they? How nice are they to humans?
Yeah, we found the Isa Browns are phenomenal. They're so friendly. So we have two Isa Brown roosters, and they're actually the white roosters that you'll see out there, and then a Rhode Island Red rooster. And so we didn't plan to have roosters. It always just was accidental. And then we decided, actually we're glad to have roosters because then we know that if the supply chain does break down, that we can hatch out our own chicks and continue their life cycle. And so we're happy to have roosters. It doesn't bother us that they're noisy. It might bother our neighbors, but but it doesn't bother us to hear them. Okay.
And when they did, I kind of went,
Yeah.
Isn't there a big difference between one? There's for meat or eggs. There's different breeds that you want to get depending on what your goal is.
So you have to decide what purpose you're wanting the chickens for. So if you want them just as meat chickens, then definitely buy the meat chicken varieties because they grow really fast. They have a lot thicker, sturdier legs because they gain weight so fast that they have to be able to support that weight. And so yeah, start out by deciding what's the purpose that I want to get into with having chickens. Do I want them just for their egg production, or do I want meat chickens? Because you definitely need different varieties for that. So that was the first thing we put on there, is just to research and determine what purpose you want your chickens for, and then also make sure they're both cold and heat tolerant because we have both here.
So I have a question. So if you want eggs and you want chicken meat, you have to put them in different coops.
The laying chickens, you can eventually harvest those and eat them, but the meat's usually really tough, and you'll have to
Kind of like mutton. Yeah, I get it.
simmer it
So-
for hours and hours.
Stew.
Yeah, so that it'll be more of a stewing hen. So the meat chickens, you buy those just specifically, and they usually, 5 or 6 months, that you only have them 5 or 6 months before you harvest them.
I think her question was, can you keep them together? And I think you can.
Yeah, you can.
You can tell them apart.
It's better to know which ones to get that fast.
You'll definitely be able to tell the difference. They're a much bigger chicken and, yeah, you'll be able to tell the difference.
We have kind of a retirement home. Many of them, they just grow old and die. So, I don't know, we.
And you go to the store to buy chicken. Oh, nice return.
Patty used to name them. And it's even harder to eat them if you name them. I told her to quit naming them.
Now I can't tell the names. I can't tell the names apart so anymore. So the roosters have names, but the hens, they all look the same. So I.
They're just the girls.
And we lost the owl in just old age. We lost 15 chickens since last fall.
Long they usually live.
It depends on the breed, but anywhere from 3 to 9 or 10 years.
10 years?
Some,
For a
they
chicken?
may not be productive, they may not be producing eggs by that point, but
I mean, that's a lifespan.
yeah. I Googled it just the other day just to see, and you can pull it up online, and it will tell you the lifespan of each breed, but I didn't think to Google how long they're productive.
They're usually productive like 3 years.
That's
Yeah.
what we found, yeah, 3 to
There's
5,
no way
just
I'm gonna kill a
just
chicken
depending,
Make your money, right?
yeah,
10
yeah.
years?
But there's-
Yeah.
And they have personality. So
Yeah.
there's some, we had one chicken, one hen that she was like a little puppy. And as soon as we would go out in the orchard or anywhere out around her, she would just follow us until we would pick her up and pet her. And she would still stay by us. And even now, if Larry's out there digging or something, I mean, they're right there under his feet wanting to see what he's doing. And so they definitely have personality, and you do actually, especially if you start out with just 6 or 10, that you learn their personalities and get attached to them. So
We have one boy, one he's named. Yeah, so she's the one who would have pulled it. Yeah, personality.
yeah. That's what we, one of our older hens,
Yeah.
that she started eating our eggs, and she just recently passed away, so we were really kind of blessed because she would get more than her share, and then she was teaching the other
Yeah.
chickens to do it. And
Is that normal for them to start doing this at age?
no, I think it was just because of her age and that she wasn't getting the nutrients because she wasn't going out to eat,
Yeah.
and it wasn't as active.
Sometimes you'll have a soft shelled egg too. Busted. Like every day we have steely deals like that.
A lot of times, once they start, they won't stop.
She has to go.
Oh, what's next on the list? Yeah, check and see if the chickens heat or cold party for your area, especially here because it's pretty hot. We kind of try to take the edge off. We have a swamp cooler that we blow towards the chicken. I would actually attach the cooler. Then we have big trees out back.
It gives them lots of shade in the summertime, so that you'll see they self try to adjust to the temperature. Just you'll see them, they'll have their wings up and they'll be panting like a dog, and that's how they cool themselves. And we had somebody that offered to give us their swamp coolers, and we're like, oh, we'll take those. So we put one on our greenhouse and one for the chicken coop, and they seem to love it. You can see them just standing there in the cool air of it. So, but that's not a necessity. For when you're getting started, don't feel like you have to put heat lamps in there and swamp coolers. That they're really good at, they'll grow more feathers if they need to stay warmer, and they'll lose feathers too to stay cooler in the summer. So we have the way we water our chickens is we just have some round barrels that are just short so that they can they're tall enough to be able to drink out of them, and we'll see that they'll just kind of sit in the shade lined around those, but it just seems to keep them cooler. So I think
They, yeah, in fact, we found that if you have like a bucket water, that they can get in there and drown. So I don't know, a pond, I don't know if they would wade out a little bit and just cool themselves and then, yeah. We haven't tried that, but we know just from our waters that they seem to gather around that seems to be a cool place for them during the summer.
Our neighbor has ducks and chickens together in the same coop, and the ducks will go all the way through the pond. The chickens walk around it. They won't touch it. They don't like to be in water. They don't have any oil in their feathers to keep them dry, so they avoid it.
Those are bees. That shape. It's
Yeah, I think as long as you make sure that they're a heat tolerant chicken, that they'll find that you don't have to pamper them. They seem to adjust. Oh, and another thing to consider when you're trying to decide what variety or what breed of chicken to get is how many eggs per year, because it depends on the variety and how many they produce. So like the white leghorns produce a lot more eggs than some of the others. The Isa Browns, what do we get, about 250 eggs a year?
I think most of the breeds we try to get are 260 to 320, try to select those. So Rhode Island Reds and Isa Browns and six.
that's for chicken.
Per chicken.
So they're laying almost every day.
Yeah, as long as they're getting good nutrition, then their bodies can keep up with that and produce that many. And so that's something that we'll talk about too, is how to make sure that they're getting the nutrition that they need and that you can provide so that they can. We just feel like the feed is getting more and more expensive, and so we want to make it worthwhile.
That's why we went with Leghorns this time. The Leghorns are a smaller body, and so the ratio of food it takes to produce an egg, and they still lay a big white egg. They say that's what most commercial growers have. That's good.
I'm just gonna teach my chicken to go into everybody else's yard.
Okay, so hopefully that covers, just to help you decide what variety and what type as you're getting started.
Then the next one goes coop area. If they're roosting in your coop, you want to be sure you leave a foot per chicken on roosting bars. So if we've got 50 chicken, you need 50 feet of roosting bars, because otherwise you're crowded in there and they're picking on each other or they won't even get up on the bars. So we've got several hens that will just roost in the nesting box.
Will they fly up to the roost and fly up into the laying boxes, where you gotta have a ramp?
Ours just fly up in there.
But we do have a ramp too. So they fly, but then some hens like to use the ramp. So we have both. And the 50 feet, he has it broken up in how long is the coop? Is it about 10 feet long?
Yeah,
So,
probably 8 or 10, but
so we have four roosting bars in one coop and two roosting bars in the other coop. So that way there's enough space for all of them.
when we pulled the ones out of the juniper tree, I went into one coop and redid the roosting bars. So I had like 2 at this height and 3 at the next height, and then 1 way up high. And it's amazing, some of them just like to be up high. The birds, they like like a turkey or something. They like to be way up in the trees.
So if you have 50 feet of roosting bars, you have 15 boxes for them to lay eggs in. How do they trade off like that? I mean, does a chicken go over there and lay a couple eggs and then move, and somebody else goes and lays a couple eggs?
Yeah.
on top of
You'll
that?
have 15 nesting boxes and have all the eggs in like 4 of them.
3 or 4
Yes.
of them.
Yeah.
We do have some fake rock eggs that we keep in some of the nests, especially when we have young hens, because that just helps them to know that's where the eggs go. But yeah, as soon as they're done laying, they leave and go peck around and eat whatever
Unless,
else. So,
unless you get one that goes 40.
So how does a chicken get to the point where they're gonna sit on the eggs with fertilized eggs to get new chicks? How do we do that?
They just, certain breeds get broody.
yeah,
Yeah, like-
that's what they call it, is that they start to brood. And so they just stay in the nest and they won't leave it. But we have hens, 2 and 3 of them at a time in one nesting box laying an egg. So if one won't leave the nesting box, the others will just squeeze it around her. And so
A lot of times when they brood, don't they, a lot of times they'll find a quiet little place. They'll find, if you've got like a little corner that's kind of, they might,
that's how we ended up with our 3rd rooster this summer. And this past summer is that we had one hen that she realized that if I lay my eggs here, they're gonna take them. And so she found this quiet little place that we never looked. And until we saw a little baby chick running around out there, and we didn't realize that she had been sitting on a bunch of eggs to hatch some out. So it's just an instinct in them, and I think it's something that as backyard chicken keepers that we should encourage that, because I think it's being bred out of them. It's a wanting to buy the chicks already without the hen there to take care of them. And so I think it is good to encourage, just so that it's not bred out of the chickens.
I agree,
Speed it up. Sorry, and we're on number 2.
Let's go through here and, okay, things that we found helpful. Okay, we already talked about the water thing. We just have like the bottom of a 50-gallon drum cut off. That's yay high. And so I just run the water into that all summer long and then clean it out every once in a while. In the winter, you just take a shovel and put the inside socket. So kind of freeze the soul good right there, and that makes water. And we got 2 of those, and our chickens go through a lot of water. They'll go through gallons a day. Our feeders, you can pass that around. This is what I've come up with on feeders.
you stick their heads in there?
Yeah. So we fill that full of feed, and then they stick their heads in it, and it keeps all of the wild birds out. It keeps the crows away, and they don't get it. They're not able to get in there and scratch and spill it everywhere, so that it's scattered all over the.
Is that just a 3-inch elbow then?
Yeah.
Okay.
They'll stick their head in there and they'll have to keep this distraction. That's just normal distraction. Yeah.
It would bother Larry to no end to walk out to the coop and see leaves just scattered everywhere, knowing that it was going to feed every sparrow in the neighborhood and every crow that wants to play in. And so
Do you give them scratch on top? Like, you got that? Do you give them like scratch?
we give them kitchen scraps, and then also we'll go out and just throw a whole corner corn out. It's just things for them. But we have quite a large area for them to just free range in. And so we have the feeders all lined along the inside, and there's multiple feeders so that if it comes all the way out, it starts sending out this little bar like, where's all my
Yeah, like if we cook potatoes, we'll put the skins in. There's some things that they say not to feed them, like nightshade plants, like tomatoes and stuff like that. Tomatoes and potatoes. But I've always just thrown tomatoes out of my garden, throw them over there, and I think they're pretty smart on what they should be. They'll pick the potatoes off and do what they want.
My sister has taken like a trough type thing, and she's hung it so it's hanging, so that they don't, because then they'll just, it's only yay high up off the ground, but then they'll eat out of it and they can't scratch it out and they'll get it all up.
And I do the same thing on the metal when I hang it up so that it's 3 or 4 inches off the ground.
We just found that the sparrows could still eat out of that.
Yes.
Yes.
He didn't.
And if it's a continuous line, they'll flip it sideways out also. So I really like that idea.
And with the price of feed, it
I
keeps
saw
going
that.
up and up, and so he just decided that we're gonna figure out a way to not have it waste.
Yeah, yeah. See, you can buy what they call a street elbow, which doesn't have the flared end on it. But I went down and I could find those. So I got the elbow with this thing on, and then you see I cut this off into bands and then put that on the inside of it. Secured to the wall. It makes it more of a 45 so that they can reach the heads in there. The ones I've got out back, I got them quite low to the bottom here. So there's only like a half inch after the elbow. And so I thought I'd move these up a little bit.
And the pressure of the grain pushes it up to the upper the elbow. At what point does that not work?
It never comes out.
Yeah, they just put their head farther in to eat whatever's in the bottom until you refill
I
it.
didn't even help it. I just tried all. Some of them out there I felt that if you cut the hole really tight. So anyway, we just love this. I have 3 of those out there with pellets in, and then 3 we feed them pellets and whole corn. And somebody told me whole corn is good for them, and you don't want to bust the corn open because you get a lot of vitamins and stuff like that. You just break the corn open. So we just feed them whole corn and just let them eat on what they want, and they'll go through. We've got a bunch of chickens out there. They go through 16 pounds of pellets a day and 2 pounds of corn. So they'll go through a bag every 2 days
Pass that around, that's the
of
pellets.
pellets.
Question.
And then
So this is good for
no
free.
corn that we.
But they'll share? They're not territorial at all?
They'll. I just like to say I've got 3 of these and then 3 corn. So one of them an acre still. You can feel the people there. Here's a chunk hole. They're done. Yeah. Just let them go.
Eat them in the morning and then, so it's gone.
Oh, there's just constant, yeah, there's just constant food.
Chicken.
Is that your homegrown corn?
No,
No, there's a supplier up in Minersville, so we go up and get, and they have huge bags that fill the entire back of the pickup truck. And so we go up and buy whole.
So they get the corn every day.
Yeah, we just have them in the feeders like that, and they eat whatever they want. And so they can eat the corn or they can eat the pellets. And so when you're considering the food to give them, you just want to make sure that they're getting at least 16% protein. And so when you look at your chicken feed options, on each bag there's a label like this, and the label will tell you what percentage of protein the feed has. And so you want to make sure that there's at least 16% protein in the feed that you're giving them, because that gives them enough nutrients to be able to still continue to lay eggs and to have what their bodies need. So be sure to look at the tags and make sure that they're getting at least the 16%. If the chicken starts molting, then they even need higher percentage of protein just to be able to. They'll stop laying eggs when they start to molt and lose their feathers, and then they'll put all of their energy into replacing those feathers. And we found that they either lay eggs or they grow feathers. And so we had some chickens that had very few feathers during the summertime, but as it started to get colder, then their bodies concentrated more on growing more feathers. So anyway, that's something just important to keep in mind, that the 16% protein is is what they say is the basic need for hens that are laying. And so we just buy this country companion layer pellet, and you can do pellets or crumbles. There's a variety of kinds, but we've found that this is what we've been the happiest with. The pellets, they seem to eat it better and not scatter it, and if you do decide to change the feed for your chickens, so do it gradually, because if you instantly change the feed that you're giving them, then they'll quit laying, or
They may quit laying.
they will lay less. Or but if you do it gradually, then you won't have that problem. They'll just continue as long as they're getting the percentage of protein that they need. And we probably won't have time tonight to show it to you, but there's a great YouTube video that it's by Purina, and it talks about molting and the egg production. And so it's only 3 minutes long, but it has some phenomenal information in it, and it shows you some great visuals so that you know
You
things.
guys
to-
want to watch
to keep in
that?
mind.
It's only like 3 minutes.
Um,
Okay.
because it kind of sums up a lot of what we have on here. So
There's
you-
another one that goes through the protein, if you want to mix your own feed. If you want to be a.
So-
I have a question.
Yeah.
On the spot, when I was bottling feed, I threw all my fat scraps out to the chickens, but they seem to love it. Is that okay?
I think so.
they're omnivores, so they eat bugs and everything. So some people put meat scraps out to their chickens as well. We usually try to just stick with the vegetable scraps, but they.
I mean, they ate that fat, the big fat stuff that I cut off.
So if anybody's interested, Carl Thurman,
His son is running a butcher shop, and he called me and said, we're going through about 600 pounds a week of just pure guts and garbage that's getting put in the dumpster, and it could go to chickens if you want. We're total vegetarians, and I didn't want to handle that kind of garbage slop in my food chain. But if someone's wanting to feed it to chickens, and you got a lot of chickens, they've got hundreds of pounds that they're willing to just move to you, because right now it's going in the garbage.
Yeah, I don't know, we usually just try to give them the vegetable scraps.
Yeah,
banana
and weeds
peels
and garden scraps and everything
yeah,
else. Yeah.
anything from our garden. Every
which
single-
is, yeah, you also want to make sure that your garden is protected from the chickens. We had, the first time we had chickens, we had the experience of finding out how much they love fresh produce.
It opens to the chicken area, and this summer somehow the gate didn't get locked, and so the chickens got in there, and just in 5 or 6 hours they had our carrots just marked down. And, so they anything green they love. So on the
Just a
back.
real quick question, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
That bag, how much does it cost?
These are $18.99.
They're up to 25.
We buy them back.
We buy a pallet at a time, so they give us a slight discount, 5% discount. So it ends up just barely covering the tax that we would pay on it.
So do you
And
go
so-
over by Hurricane?
So
Or
this,
because
no,
my
this was
friend-
from Pal Ranch, and we just barely, was it last week? Last week, just barely bought a pallet, and it was $18.95. Was that after the discount or before?
It was a little over $800. But,
How many eggs, one, if you don't mind, how many eggs, in one bag?
So.
okay, we're getting about 4 dozen a night, and we go through 16 pounds of that a day. So I figured it up. We're feeding about 880 a day. Okay. And we're getting 4 dozen eggs and we sell them for $3. So,
Okay.
so we're making.
But then that doesn't count the 6 to 9 months it takes to raise them
Sure.
up to the point where they are laying eggs. So it's not going to be a big cost savings for you over what you pay for the egg, except the egg prices keep going up. So it could save.
If you can
money
get
a
5
little
or
bit,
6
but-
bucks, out of a homegrown, free range, well cared for chicken eggs, but a lot of people won't pay that, you know.
And
You
it
should go down
depends
to
on the
Costco
feed.
and pay $3.
We have a friend that just wants to feed them strictly organic. And so he's paying $35 a bag. So it depends on the feed and it depends on what your goals are.
It's just nice to be able to have the eggs when, you know, I mean, I wasn't looking at Costco for eggs, but I remember going to Walmart and like no eggs on the shelf, period, for quite a few weeks over this winter. And so it's just nice to know you don't have to worry about that.
That's what we felt that it does. It gives us peace of mind. We, just in our immediate family, we have 6 of us, 27 of us. There's 2 on the way. Just in our immediate family. And so we feel like if something does happen, we want to make sure that we're able to help them and provide for our own needs too.
Is your feeder, so instead of mitigate the need for smaller mesh for the sterile problem?
Yeah. This is out
So
in
you
the
have
open.
that.
This feeder's out in the open, so that any bird or anything can fly in. And in fact, we had crows flying in and stealing our eggs. So he just created a simple little, you put two shovels in the ground and then put pants on the shovels and then a shirt on the shovels, stuff it full of gunny sacks and put a bucket and a hat on top of the bucket. And that keeps the crows from flying into our food. So the first couple of weeks, we would go out there and it would startle us that somebody's in our chicken yard. But we couldn't figure out what was happening with the eggs, and so he finally put a camera out there, and within a minute and a half of him leaving, a crow flew in. So they knew they were watching. And they knew as soon as he left that it was free game. So the crows around here are really naughty. So you have to figure out ways to outsmart them. So a scarecrow is very helpful.
I was gonna say, my sister buys her feed at Steve Regan's, which is usually horse supplies and stuff, but it's up from IFA, and she said their feed is a lot less than most places.
We tried to shop around and we found our ranch
Is less.
even was less than
Okay.
Steve Regan, but maybe it fluctuates too.
I'm sure it does.
And that's actually how we ended up finding the whole kernel corn, because Steve Regan would get it from the supplier up in Minersville, and so we thought, well, we're getting so much that we might as well just go get our own and eliminate the middleman.
So they'll eat 100 pounds of corn in 11 days. So they'll eat 100 pounds of pellets in 6 days. So about twice as long as the corn.
You're talking
But-
50 chickens.
Yeah, but if you're
Right.
starting out with just 5 or 10 chickens, then your feed should be that.
So
Wow,
how
that's
do
a
you,
lot.
4 dozen a day, so you supply the whole neighborhood?
We can't keep up with it. This last week, there was, we were a week out on orders. And I called the lady yesterday, I said, you're the last one on the list, I just don't think we can get any eggs
This week.
this week, we'll try next week. She wanted 12 dozen a week. So that takes,
She has a daughter
three
that
of
has
three of
7
our
kids, so there's 9 in their family, and so we were trying to share it. So, but yeah. That's a lot.
Man, we're having a week.
Somebody could find the bags for less money, like you said, caravans seems to be the beneficial place. But if there's a better place, then people should.
In fact, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me grab my phone really quick. There is a neighbor here in the valley that she gets feed out of Delta, and they deliver to St. George every month or month and a half. And so you might check with them too and see how their feed compares.
Sure.
The bag that she was telling us about, though, do you remember what? I think it's on the label.
But she says she still gets eggs. This back side is if you wanted to make your own feed, we thought about doing that, like buying, and it tells you the percentage of protein. And so if you wanted to make your own, there's a jug of Stacy YouTubers to show through this. This is where we got that, is her information. But if you wanted
And so
to,
we're not positive how accurate it is, because I started Googling each of these items to see what percentage of protein they contain, and it didn't, my results didn't show what her results show. So you'll definitely want to do your own research, because we're questioning the accuracy of her numbers.
but what you do is you come down here below the list of proteins there, and you've got a recipe there. And she's got, okay, first thing under there, it says 20 pounds and times 0.15. So that would be a 15% like the wheat, okay? And when you find that out, gives you 3% protein. So what she's done is she's gone down through here and done a recipe for 100 pounds of your own food. So she's gone 30 pounds of oats, 20 pounds of sunflower seeds, 30 pounds of millet, 20 pounds of corn, 5 pounds of flaxseed. And she's times those out to get you your percent, the total. And then down at the bottom, it's 16% protein is what you want to do.
Is this just for satisfaction? Those that just want to get their own load?
Well, some people are want to be organic, and if you go to like Delta and know that he's not spraying his fields with a bunch of crap, and we thought about doing that, getting whole oats and wheat and corn, and then something else to get your 16% mix. But when I started checking into the whole grains, they were like $25 for 50 pounds. So it would have cost more than a bag of pellets that are engineered with the right amount of nutrients and.
I know one of my sisters ferments. She makes a lot of the different grains together, ferments, and feeds that to her chickens too. And then
water around wobbly.
and then another one actually does the mix and then sprouts it and keeps big trays of sprouts. And so she'll give like
So
a
in
tray
the
of
winter,
sprouts
in the
every couple
winter
of
we
days.
put cayenne in our ferment too, and
Yeah.
it keeps them laying. And
You can ferment the pellets too. You could do, if I'm going through 16 pounds a day, I just put 16 pounds in a bucket, and then 3 days you feed that bucket. And they say it cuts down on your feed.
It helps disease in their
Yeah,
bodies.
and
Doesn't
it
it? Isn't
gives
that
them the good nutrients
What about
for
the
their
rubber band?
digestive.
The what?
The rubber band. They can use last.
Oh.
Wrong
is that
crowd.
gastric bypass for chickens? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we're over time. If you guys have any questions.
Well, let me tell you this, so this feeder that you could get out of Delta, it's called Pavant Growers. And I can give you their phone number if you're interested in it, or you can, I can pass this around too so that you could get, this is just a tag off of the feed that she gets. And this is lane mash, and it's only 11.6% protein, but you could supplement with something else to help increase the protein too if you wanted to get feed through them. But I think she said that they provide 2 different kinds of chicken feed, and that this was the least expensive one. So if you wanted to pay more, then come on in. So if you wanted to pay more, then you could get the more expensive feed, and then hopefully the protein is higher. But it's called Pavant Growers, and
So maybe if a group wanted to go together and buy like.
Right,
yeah,
that's right.
because they said they would actually deliver here to Diamond Valley if there was enough interest.
Right.
If
We
enough
did that
people wanted to order.
wheat a few years ago, and I don't know if you guys remember that we got a grower in Delta to bring wheat down
Uh-huh.
a few years ago. So yeah,
Say that again.
good plan.
Are we the only ones here in Diamond Valley that have chickens? Or are there more that just
There's
Just, I mean, Annette Bensley, God, he's got more chickens.
Yeah, I think
There's lots.
There's a lot of people that, and maybe, they felt like they knew enough. They could,
Oh, yeah.
like, I know our next door neighbors have a lot of chickens, and they raise meat chickens and turkeys, and so.
So here's a question for you. We have I have a neighbor and somebody else that we talked to had the same issue with a chicken whose vent got clogged. I mean, they were trying to lay an egg and the egg was too big or whatever. And they ended up putting the chicken down. Is there anything else you can do?
We haven't ever had
C-section, I
that.
don't know.
Do you remember his last? It's right there.
They tried. They said they
Right,
could.
the kitty corner across the street from us is a veterinarian.
Oh, okay.
So I would say call him.
Okay.
His last name's Anderson. For some reason, I can't remember his first name right now. His wife's name's Mindy. But he's a vet, so if you have a problem like that. But we haven't, with the breeds that we've had, we've never had that problem, ever.
So does it help to keep sort of purebred for that then? In other words, to stick to one breed instead of like.
We have two breeds out there now, but we've had as many as 5 or 7 breeds. The one year, our neighbors that lived behind us, their dog got in and killed a bunch of our chickens, and so the dog was nice enough to take some home so that the owners knew that he'd been busy that day. So she called me and apologized and said, I'll get you some chickens, and she was able to find some laying hens. So, because I said, we don't want to start over with chicks, because it takes 9 months of feeding them to get them to the point of laying. And so she was able to find us some laying hens and brought them in. They were every different variety in New Hampshire, and you name it, we had it. And so we found that different breeds have different personalities, like the Easter eggers or the Australorps, they're antisocial, and they just do not get along with the other chickens. They like to be in their own space, and they'll always lay in the farthest, quietest, hiding away nesting box that we have.
That's funny. Our experience, we have Americanas. We've got Americanas this year for chicks, and they're the sweetest, gentlest little things.
Yeah, ours, for some reason, they avoid all the other chickens, and
That's funny.
we had one that she was flying out all the time because she just didn't want to be with the rest of them. So we'd have to trim her wings so that she would stay in her. So
Answer a question or two on your build here. The bucket is an unusual bucket, so where did you find the bucket at?
If any of you guys want buckets,
we have a few.
I'll
We'll
send
give.
some home with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
My son got these at his work, and they had, you can probably smell it, they had a hemp product.
Okay.
And I'm not even sure what flavor it is. Well, it's an oil, so it's non-water soluble. So you gotta clean them out. I clean this with gas. Can you smell it? I clean this with gas, and then I power washed it and scrubbed it with soap. If you want a bucket, you're welcome to the bucket.
And then Larry, specifications again on the elbow there.
At the elbow, okay, you can get like what they call it, a street elbow, which doesn't have the flare on the one end. So that would, and you can get those in a 45, okay? But they didn't have any when I wanted to show you guys this. So all they had was a flared on both ends on the elbow, on an elbow. And so what I did was went out on my saw. What do you call that? Saw? No, saw. Miter saw. On my miter saw, and I cut a couple of rings off each one, and then I cut it flush so that I could make the hole the size of the small end. Okay, so, and then I took that little ring that I cut and put it on the inside to keep it from going back and forth. And you could, it was tight enough that I didn't feel like I needed to cement it. But you could cement it, but then if you ever crack the bucket, you won't be able to get that out. But it just keeps it from going back, back out. So what I've done is I've taken an elbow, cut the flare off one end, cut it in a couple of bands so I can put the band over the inside.
So the flare off the small end you cut off. Okay.
Yeah. Both ends flare the same, so I just cut one of the flares off.
Okay.
Then made the hole the size back.
But if you shop around, you can find
And
some
street,
without,
the
yeah,
street.
so that.
how did you cut the circle
We just.
in the bucket
jigsaw.
itself? Jigsaw, huh?
Yeah, I heated it, made me a hole with a soldering iron. You can do it with the drill, but then I just got the jigsaw in there and just made sure I cut it so it was
Tight.
exact, you
Okay.
know. And we just love these. They no waste.
Save a lot of it. Oh, it saves us so much time. And yeah, the more expensive it gets, the more meaningful that is. So,
So probably 5-6 inches up. Are you gonna put that on something out in the yard higher than that, or?
We put them on a Z block. It's about 4 inches,
Okay,
4 to 6 inches tall. Just
any kind of block,
yeah.
just to build, yeah, just to build it up a little way so that it's just a nice height for them to eat out of. We can step out on the deck and show you what it looks like out there.
It's pretty much on the surface, so
No, it's still fair, but yeah.